Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Englewood Roundtable. As I try to always start each meeting with positive information, want to make sure that we know that Englewood is on the rise, and excellence in Englewood and investment in Englewood is a priority of not only the department, but especially the mayor and the mayor's office under the initiative Invest Southwest and everything else. And so just to remind folks that $14 million investment being made on the rehabilitation of the Englewood Fire Station, which was a round one request for proposals that the Department of Planning issued in August of 2020. We also have a streetscape project, which is underway in terms of planning in Englewood, which is close to $19 million in total budget. We also have a $30+ million project called Englewood Thrive, which will complete the build out of the Englewood Mall in the first phases of 1 and 2. And that will be a 61 unit affordable housing and mixed income development with commercial space on the ground floor. Will be also a two-part development with a second building in the future phase, as well as a number of other developments along the 63rd Street corridor, such as Iman's Go Green on Racine Fresh Market. We've got some investments that we've made there. We're working with a couple of folks who are doing housing adaptive reuse out of some schools. And so we're doing a lot here to make sure that everyone sees that the development of this neighborhood is a priority of this administration. And so I'm happy to always remind and say those things at the beginning of these meetings to let you all know that Englewood is a live, work, play neighborhood, and we're again on the rise. And so welcome you all to the roundtable. And we have a very brief agenda this evening, highlighted by our friends in the mayor's office who are here to share with us. And here's the agenda. Let me put this on the screen here. So we have the City of Chicago's new land sale platform and program. And Margaret Decker from the mayor's office will present that. And then we have a couple of community updates. And if the alderman is able to shake loose from her meeting or her chief of staff, if they can provide us with some information, that would be great. If not, then we'll wrap. And so I want to welcome Margaret Decker from the mayor's office to the roundtable. Margaret, welcome.
Thanks, Patrick. Cool. So we can go to the next slide, or do you need me to share my presentation, or oh, you have it. Okay, cool. So I wanted to share with you today the new Shy Block Builder land sale platform that we're rolling out tomorrow, hopefully. So, right now the city has a lot of vacant land. We know it's heavily concentrated on the south and west sides. And right now it's pretty difficult to understand what land is available for sale, what programs people can use to purchase land, whether it's neighbors, whether it's folks that want to build housing. It's just kind of a confusing process. It's not very transparent. And so Shy Block Builder is our attempt to kind of make the process more clear and make this program much more make land sales much more transparent for residents and organizations. So you can go to the next slide. So this is basically just what I said already. So you can go to the next one. So I just want to kind of level set what we're trying to do versus what we're not trying to do. So what we are trying to do is market land for sale strategically to encourage development so we can see more housing be built and maintenance and activation of land. We want to prioritize sales to neighbors and to individuals from the community. We want to make land sale programs more efficient and easier for applicants to navigate. And we also want to increase transparency about city-owned land and the land sale process. What we're not trying to do is sell off all city-owned land. This is not a fire sale. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to sell land in an arbitrary or non-strategic way. We're not trying to sell land to speculators that will keep the land vacant. And we're not trying to sell land for projects that don't align with community priorities. Next slide. So the proposed land uses for Shy Block Builder is for housing, side yards, commercial developments, and open space. So for housing, we'll be able to sell land for affordable housing through the city's City Lots for Working Families program through the Department of Housing. which means that housing has to be affordable for households at up to 140% of the area median income. Also at market rate, so that could be housing that will be occupied by the builder or sold at market rate. Their side yards, so that's a yard that's directly adjacent to a neighbor's home. So you can use that for any purpose you want. That's allowable by zoning. So you could use it for a garden or a community space or simply a backyard. Commercial development, so there's not a ton of land that's available for commercial development, but that's kind of aimed at, activities with goods, merchandise, services. That also includes mixed use buildings with housing and land. And then open space, which is like, no like construction or structures on the building or on the land, but could be like community space, plazas, parks, gardens, etc. And that's the summary of the uses. So next slide. So the key takeaways here is that in order to purchase land, you must have a feasible plan for the property. So we want to really emphasize that we don't want to sell land to speculators. We want to encourage folks who, have a clear plan to apply for land so we can help get you access to it to execute on your project. We want to emphasize that applications from local homeowners and small local developers will be preferenced. We really want to benefit folks from the community who live in the community. This is also going to be the first of several opportunities to buy land from the city. So this isn't one and done. There will be future land sales. We're not selling everything or marketing everything at once because we want to kind of see how this goes. And then we have room for, feedback and iterations for future rounds. Land will be available for sale at market rate or at 10% of the market rate, depending on the proposed use. So we're moving away from the dollar lots, and neighbors can purchase land directly next to them for 10% of the market rate. And also if you're aiming to have open space, so that could be anything from a garden or some sort of art or anything, or even simply just fencing the lot and putting a bench down. That would be 10% of market rate. Other projects will be market rate, so that's housing and commercial development. There are also resources available to assist buyers in completing their applications. So we'll have helplines in English and Spanish. We'll have information sessions that folks can attend. We'll be sending out postcards to adjacent neighbors to let them know that there's a vacant lot next to them that's available for sale. So there's a few ways that we'll be reaching out to folks there. Next slide. So our key dates, so the applications will open tomorrow. We know that's right around the holidays, so we wanted to keep it open until the end of January. We got some good feedback that we need to make sure that there's enough time for people to understand this process and how they can apply. We'll have information sessions the week of December 5th, and we may shift this one the week of January 2nd to later, just so folks have a chance to get back from any holidays or vacations. We'll aim to review our applications by the end of March and make recommendations for sales to aldermen. So just important point to remember is that all land sales must be approved by City Council. So it's really important that we have aldermanic support for this program and for any projects on land. And then end of April, applicants will be notified, and May and June, DPD will prepare the land sale ordinance and we'll push those through City Council. Great. So that is kind of the summary, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, Margaret, and I think there's a couple questions in the chat. So
okay,
why don't we go?
Sure. Okay. So I'm seeing.
Butler. Yep. Let me read it. I'll read it. Okay. So to clarify, this is coming from Ms. Butler. To clarify, you are moving away from the $1 for homeowners, so the $1 land sales, but affordable housing developers and not-for-profits will still be able to purchase lots for $1 through the current city program? Question mark.
Yes. So through City Lots for Working Families, which is a Department of Housing program, there is an incentive for developers to purchase, land for $1 to help encourage the development of affordable housing. So if there's an affordable housing developer that wants to build affordable housing, they can leverage the City Lots for Working Families program.
And if anybody's interested in learning more about that program, we can provide that information via our partners at the Department of Housing. But we're also, just to be mindful when we talk about the city.
Oh, you're kind of going in and out.
Yeah, Patrick, we can barely hear you.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry. Can you
yeah,
hear me now? Is that better? Sorry, everybody. I was just trying to give a little bit of more, brief information about the City Lots for Working Family program, where the impact that we're trying to see in that particular program is scale, right? So we typically like to work with developers who are proposing between 8 and 10 lots to, kind of build up a block or build up, housing at a larger scale than a single project, solo project, as it were. And so just think about that. And I get the question, and I think it's a very valid question. But in that particular program, we're looking for scale to actually bring, a lot of housing units into a certain block or community. So next question was posed by Ashley Johnson. So she says, thank you for the question, Ms. Johnson. So aldermen have the final say in what projects get a green light.
So I would say just typically how land sales work in Chicago by ordinance is that anytime the city sells land, it has to be approved by city council. So that means we'll have an ordinance introduced, and we're trying to streamline it a bit to have these all. So once we kind of like go through all of our applications, we want to submit these as a bulk ordinance so that we don't, because, even city council today, you'll see that there were several ordinances passed, each for individual land sales at today's city council. And so that can often be kind of confusing because we're sitting, or like just long and time consuming because we're sitting through the meeting being like, okay, does this alderman want to sign off on this particular sale in their ward? Okay, we all have to vote on that. Okay, now we're going to the next one. So we're trying to streamline it and make it a little more straightforward. But yes, aldermen ultimately, it's important that they're supportive of the project so it can smoothly go through city council.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Margaret. Next questions from Eddie Johnson. So Eddie asks for clarity, is this proposal a plan? An application process is opening up for a proposal plan. I don't know. Eddie, do you want to come on and maybe speak to this question? Maybe I got the syntax wrong, but Eddie, feel free to unmute yourself and ask that question verbally so I get the right explanation.
Sorry about the typo. My question is this a proposed plan, basically saying it's not etched in stone. That's my question. And if it's not etched in stone, application process is opening up now. I believe she said now into January, but I was kind of confused whether or not it was etched in stone or this is just a trial and error. So that was my question.
Yeah, so we're opening up applications for land generally because I think, right now someone might want to purchase land from the city, but it's not very clear. Let's say that you have an idea, you want to build a community garden. It's not really clear how you might go about accessing that. And so we're trying to just show like what we can sell right now and what's available for sale. We've done some environmental reviews to make sure that there's no, we're not selling land that was a former gas station that could potentially cause contamination for if you wanted to, put a garden there, for example. So we've done some pre-work, we've cleaned up title to make that process a little easier. And then if you kind of have an idea about what you want to do, you can apply for that lot to do your project. So yes, there's not like, we're not saying, you have to do housing. I mean, there's a couple, areas where we're saying we'd prefer that housing goes here, we'd prefer that only side yards go here, but it's not like we're saying you have to, do this whole thing. We're kind of open for ideas that folks have that they're interested in doing. Does that help to answer? Okay, let me know if any clarification is needed.
Okay, I don't see any more questions in the chat for Margaret. Are there any other questions? Did everybody get their question answered?
Yeah, I think we have a lot. I don't know if that was somebody else about to come
No,
on.
go ahead. Yep.
I know we're having some continual conversations because this proposed plan and or plan that's being rolled out tomorrow is, as we said yesterday during our village meeting, is definitely not in the best interest of the homeowners here in this community. And it does not, if you go back to the slide that the edited slide, that you had around the housing. And, you know, everything is kind of not what normally residents or neighbors would be doing. And so it's very clear from the Come Home new initiatives, from the Ready Build initiative, that this is more of a housing development initiative. And I guess I'm wondering why or where is the housing department, you know, where are they in this? Because this is not really about land sales for neighbors in our communities. This is about a housing development plan. So I guess I'm wondering, what is the housing plan for Englewood? Because I know a lot of these lots will not be allocated for homeowners to purchase because of a housing plan that's already in place.
Can you say more there of the housing plan that's in place? Is that something like you've talked with DOH about, or are you?
No, I know that
asking about
DOH
one?
has a housing plan. So what is the
Okay.
housing plan for DOH? Because they're gonna hold land based on their housing plan. And so I guess I'm wondering, why is this being proposed as a land use option and it's more of a housing development plan?
I would say that it so as a city, we're getting requests for land from many sources for many purposes. And so we're not necessarily trying to, I guess, you know, housing is very important. We've talked a lot about how we need more housing in neighborhoods that's affordable to residents. But I would say we're trying to kind of cover a lot of bases. So we get requests for ANLAP, we get requests for community gardens, we get requests for housing. And so how can we kind of put all of those, make it more transparent so we can see what's available and folks can kind of look at actually purchasing it. So it's, because I think right now it's very one-off. So I guess that's kind of how I would respond.
Do the Department of Housing have the plan already laid out, which I'm sure they do, of the lots that are already prime and ready for those developers that Patrick talked about, to give them 8 or 9 lots so they can do it at scale, so that in Englewood people know where the Department of Housing on the 5th floor is making decisions that we have no idea about? Because people are going to go to this site and they're going to wonder, why aren't the lots on my block available? But it's a plan that's happening that has not been executed or either made to the community or the homeowners on that block. So I that's why I'm saying I'm not sure why the Department of Housing is not a part of this, since most of these transactions will be for affordable housing.
Okay, got it. So we've been in touch with Department of Housing around this. And so they had kind of proposed that it would make sense to move. So right now the City Lots for Working Families application is kind of through its own process. And so we're trying to integrate these together. So it's just kind of a one-stop shop to access land sale applications. So through City Lots for Working Families, at least in this iteration, they haven't necessarily set aside particular lots that are only for City Lots for Working Families. We're interested to see what sorts of applications we get. It could be, you know, I mean, just given construction costs right now, it might actually not be feasible for construction without additional subsidy. So we're kind of just going to see what we get and see how it plays out. And then that will help us understand what is needed and what other uses we might be able to, and supports we might be able to provide for future iterations, whether that's for homeowners and neighbors or for housing or what have you.
Let me just add one more layer here, so that we don't, you know, get on a runaway train of maybe like the spirit of the program being misunderstood. I am not aware, as the planner for Englewood, that there is already, quote unquote, a plan cooked up by the Department of Housing for lots that are, quote unquote, set aside and therefore thus unavailable to, you know, residents and homeowners on certain blocks to purchase through this particular program. So what I can commit to do is to, you know, digging deeper with the Department of Housing and finding out if in fact a plan does exist, that, you know,
Yeah,
So-
so I do know one plan exists, which is around the trail, and the trail, the Grow Greater Englewood group is already working on a land trust to build affordable housing. And Margaret has already conveyed to us yesterday during our village meeting that the land over there would not be sold to the homeowners or anyone for that matter because of that plan. And so I'm pretty sure it is
You're
others
talking,
like that.
about Mark Thompson from.
No,
Team
Margaret
Work?
was on the call yesterday.
Oh, I'm sorry, Margaret. So I think so.
Yeah.
And you're saying near the Englewood Trail, right?
Near the Englewood Trail, there's a housing plan because a land trust is being developed.
Oh,
by-
it's okay.
And it's also, when they talked about, we were in the meeting about the land trust, is to build affordable housing. So the fact that those are already been taken off the mark tells me that there's probably more that we have not uncovered that are happening in certain areas. And if we could see a map of where the areas that you talked about that had some environmental scanning, or the areas that you've talked about that have already kind of been in the queue of possibilities for developers, I think that'd be helpful, because then residents will not ask us, why is it sitting on lots of my block that I cannot have access to?
Yeah, that's exactly why we want to have this portal. So when the map is live, you'll be able to click on each lot and see whether it's available for sale. And if it's not available for sale, why not? So it might say further environmental review is required. It might say there's a planning process or a sale in process or something already. And so that will kind of give a little bit more context. I mean, it's hard to put like every single specific reason, but we tried to have some broad categories of reasons that we'd be happy to like provide more clarity on as well.
And I'll just also say, remember folks, that there's a natural safeguard in place here when, one, the project has to go to city council to convey property. Two, the alderman has to, sign off on that, so to speak, and therefore approve the application, kind of go with the department and the mayor's office, and whoever's running this program, and their review. And then also, first and foremost, the department has to, review the application, right? So there's, and then, whatever process is that the alderman does have in the respective communities, they may have a community process. And so like, there's some natural, safeguards and guardrails in place here that may or may not prevent some of the, scenarios that, folks may be kind of thinking about right now as this program is being piloted, right? So, just, keep all that in mind. There's always a process before these things happen, before they get to city council. So just, I think let's let the program roll out. Obviously, we want to get this thing launched tomorrow. We want to make sure you guys know that this is available to kind of go, mess around with on the internet and go see how this works and develop the user friendliness of it. And then, then let's troubleshoot all that together, right? There's another question here in the chat from Ashley Johnson. She's got two questions, I think. So let's answer that question. Englewood residents have been sending in those requests for land and being denied in order to open up labs to be used by people who aren't from Englewood. We're being skipped over when we've been trying to develop and maintain this land for decades. Furthermore, she says, I saw the map on the new site of City Lots, which is no longer live. There are a majority in Englewood, and what reason would anyone who isn't from Englewood have to want to develop this land, and why are they being given priority? Lastly, what happens if there are multiple applications for one lot? How is the only chosen? So, all right.
Yeah, I can speak to
good
a few of those. So the second two I think are related. So I would say that when someone applies for land, let's say we get multiple applications, we consider like a number of factors. So most importantly, is this in line with community priorities? So Englewood has a quality of life plan. Is there, does this reference what has been laid out as goals for Englewood's quality of life plan? Does it reference any letters of support from neighbors or, community meetings, discussions, and what that, and like demonstrating support from residents for that? So that's a huge piece of it. And then also thinking about preferencing residents from the community, folks that live in the community. And then we also, as has been mentioned, there is a strong need for housing. And so that's a priority as well. So those are kind of some of the factors that will be considered when choosing between applications. And then what reason would anyone who isn't from Englewood have to want to develop this land? Yeah, I think that's a valid question. I think I'm personally interested to see kind of what people submit, and there may be times where what's submitted is not in line with community priorities, or we think would have an impact on gentrification, or just isn't something that the community wants to see. And so we would deny it. We're not, again, the goal is not to just sell off all the land. We want to see like thoughtful uses of land. So that's kind of like the perspective there.
Yep, thanks, Margaret. Oh, she has one more follow-up question here at the end here.
Who will make the
regarding multiple
determination?
applications, and how's that process determined to decide if there is more than one applicant?
Who will make the determination off of whether a project meets community goals? So I think the Department of Planning and Development staff will kind of take a first pass at this. And then, as Patrick said, there's going to be a process where this has to go to the alderman. They may have some thoughts about that as well. But we do ask people in their applications to write a paragraph about how this meets community goals, and also upload like evidence of support if they have it. Can you share what the expectations are when submitting an application for alderperson approval? So the application won't go to the alderperson. DPD, like I mentioned, will kind of take a first pass at reviewing all the applications, make recommendations, and then provide to the alderman for approval. So that way, when we go to city council, it can be passed. So for all of these applications, there will be clear kind of checklists for what is required, whether that's a plan for the land, a budget, kind of like feasible, next steps. So that way we can ensure that everyone can submit a successful application before, then when DPD will take a look through and kind of make recommendations.
And that's the same process for homeowners. So DPD needs to look at the application for the homeowners as well and approve those, and then make recommendations if that should go forward for a homeowner. So they're getting the same exact criteria as a developer.
No, not necessarily. So as I mentioned, like we're considering a lot of different factors. So we've heard a lot that there is desire for housing. So that is one of the priorities. But if we get a housing application that's not very strong, or we don't think it's feasible, and we also get an application from a neighbor who is, planning something that is very much in line with community priorities for, let's say there's a garden or something, that's just an example, we may choose that one over the housing because we think, this is more in line with the community priorities.
Yeah, okay. So there's two more questions here. There's one by Ms. Johnson, and I want to get in the Chief of Staff for Alderman Taylor, Joan Fodiro, who's here today on the roundtable. So why don't I go to Joan first, and then we'll close. Wait, why don't I go to Ashley Johnson first? So she's asking Margaret, when does the community get asked? And I think, that process is not necessarily something that is embedded in the program guideline here. That is something that would be initiated and supported by, an alderman through their process of reviewing projects that are, being proposed in front of the community with city, assistance and or purchase, right, of property. So that would be, up to the elected official. And so, that's a TBD kind of thing, Ms. Johnson. Real quick, I'm guessing why DPD, guessing what our community. No, when we have the data and haven't been asked. So, all right, I'll let this be your last question, then I'll go to Joan and we'll wrap this segment up. But so the department has reviewed virtually every single plan that has been created, published, vetted, socialized, in all of these communities. Like, I can name all the communities. There's 77, and in the Invest Up West, portfolio. The first task of the department was for us to review existing plans, and also currently, there are a number of planning studies that are being undertaken right now. So we're always looking at planning. We're always looking to see what the community input is and what was, right? We're informed on past and present. So like, I feel like we have a good idea of, a lot of these neighborhoods and communities, what the folks on the ground are thinking and have been thinking. But also, we are very flexible because, current things change, right? People, community groups, organizations and stakeholders, there's always an evolving process of where are we at today? How do we project for the future? What do we want to see in our neighborhoods? And those things always change. And so, our best effort is always to try to stay current with what is going on in the ground, which is why we're very active, not only through our planning processes, but our engagement in neighborhoods, our roundtables, our briefings with the aldermen, our mini meetings, with stakeholders and our corridor manager stuff, and all these things that we're doing across the south and west sides, and particular to this neighborhood, in this community, we're doing our best to make sure that we are current with what the needs are in the community. All right, so we leave it at that. Joan, Fedara from the 20th Ward Service Office. I see your hand is up. Welcome to the roundtable.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get clarity on a few things. So I heard you talk about a pilot. What is the area? Is it the whole Englewood community, or what area will this cover?
So this is citywide. So we've kind of reviewed all of the lots that will be available in Englewood, especially in the 20th Ward. Alderman Taylor has kind of given her feedback on that. So it's more like a time limited pilot where we're saying, let's kind of see how this window goes. This is kind of a way that we're considering that we're marketing land proactively to kind of get, kind of just see what comes in and what types of things people like or don't like. And then we can iterate and reopen the application at a later date with some of those changes incorporated.
And when is this supposed to launch?
This application will open up tomorrow and it will be available until February 3rd.
So one of my biggest questions is, I believe in 2019, you all tried to open up the City Lots for Working Families program, which would have built housing for families at 120% AMI, which I think at the time was like $105,000 yearly income. This takes that up to 140% AMI, which I just looked at, it is a little bit over 145,000 for yearly income. So I think in line with a lot of the questions that have already been asked, what is the thought process behind this? Because we know that the majorities of families, not just in Englewood, but across the south side, across the south and west sides of the city, are not making up to $145,000 a year.
Yeah, so the City Lots for Working Families ordinance, this is all codified. So it kind of lays out the exact stipulations in the ordinance. I can't speak to exactly how that came to be, but we can kind of get an answer from the Department of Housing and follow up there.
Yeah, that'd be helpful, because from what I remember, there were either none or very little applicants for City Lots and Working Families, which would have had price points cheaper than this program. So
this, okay. Yeah, so we're basically moving the City Lots for Working Families application just onto this platform. So it's the same stipulations as City Lots for Working Families, still through that ordinance. It's just through a different platform.
yeah, but the income level has changed. But I'm just asking a slightly separate question of if that program was not effective in this neighborhood and neighborhoods like Englewood, then what is the thought process between trying to relaunch it?
So it's been open kind of this whole time, City Lots for Working Families. It never has closed. People have been regularly applying for it. I think there's definitely an option to kind of come up with a tailored housing solution for Englewood, similar to the Woodlawn housing ordinance, which I know, has been worked on and organized. So I think, maybe there's opportunity to work with the alderman and the housing department and the planning department to come up with something. So that's totally an option that we could explore.
All right, and I just,
Really quickly, I just want to
sorry,
add,
sorry, Joan.
no, you're fine, you're fine. I just want to add, to some extent that makes sense. But I think even for Woodlawn, the issue is the price point.
Mhm.
And so if we're talking about that Englewood needs housing, it needs to be at a price point that's affordable to people who live in the neighborhood. I mean, from what I can tell in the chat, people are asking basically, who is this program for? And I think it's very clear so far. It was clear within, the amount of time that I've been on here that it's not for current residents. And also the quality of life program, from what I understand, or the plan, the focus around development was more so towards rehabbing existing structures.
Mhm.
So I don't know how this again falls in line with that either.
Yeah, so I think it's really up to the applicants to demonstrate how it falls in line, and if it doesn't, then the department would not approve those applications.
You said it's up to the applicants as far as developers?
So if anybody is applying to do anything and they're not able to justify and demonstrate how it is in line with existing plans, then they would not be able to have their application accepted.
Yeah, I just want to
Does that make
remind
sense?
Yeah,
It makes sense, but I mean, working with the city long enough, I would like to see that work in practice, but
Sure, yeah.
I'm
And
done for now.
And I'll say also, as we mentioned, the alderman and the aldermanic office do have to provide input and sign off. So that's just another kind of like checkpoint for the alderman to provide more input and make sure that it is in line with community expectations and plans.
I put a question. I don't want to monopolize conversation because I know we talked a lot about this yesterday and we'll continue to talk about this. And I know
Mhm.
I had to jump off soon, but I asked a question that had came up yesterday as well. What was the reasoning or the rationale for eliminating the opportunity for homeowners to purchase city-owned lots that are not necessarily adjacent to them? And what data do you have that made it you kind of go back to the ANLAB program, the side lots, and then what make, like, I'm curious about that. You kept kind of the dollar lot for the developers, but then you kind of went back to the ANLAB program and didn't get an opportunity to give people to purchase more than one, or either across the street from them or, 2 doors down from them, which many of the large lot owners did.
Yeah, so I think we kind of split it up into side yard versus open space. So side yard is directly next door to the resident's house. So that's kind of one category. And then open space is, a resident on the block could purchase a lot across the street for open space, as long as they're able to maintain the space. I think what was really important is we just didn't want to see land continuing to be vacant. Because we know that, again, residents are taking care of this land, and we want to make sure that it gets, activated, fenced, taken care of. And so if a homeowner does want to purchase something across the street, they would kind of apply for it via open space and kind of propose a plan for how they will be able to have that land be activated. So it could be something as simple as I'll fence it and, plant a tree or whatever, or if they wanted to do something more complicated like a garden or whatever.
Okay. It's just crazy that you would put that responsibility on homeowners, and the city has left the land vacant for several decades. And now you're saying, hey, if you want land, you can't leave it vacant, but okay. All right, go ahead, Cecile.
yeah, okay, before we take Cecile's comment, I just want to acknowledge that Alderman Coleman of the 16th Ward has joined the roundtable. Welcome to the roundtable, Alderman Coleman. Just to catch up a little bit here, we're just having some conversation about the city's new land sale program and the new processes that will be effective tomorrow after it launches. And here on the screen right now are some current dates of the timeline, as it were, as we roll into next year. And so folks, have, obviously, there's some questions regarding the program and some of the value of it and some of the rationale behind the why and the how. So We're just having a brief conversation about that, entertaining some questions and trying to provide some answers. Feel free to jump in if you want, but we do have a question. I saw Cecile DeMello, her hand was up. So Alderman, if you don't have any questions at this time, I'd like to take Cecile's question. Okay, Cecile.
Yeah, I was going to follow up to Joan's remarks because there's truth in that. And this is part of why I shared when I first heard about the plan too, about how overwhelming it feels. Because the quality of life plan, if it's used for the justification for Englewood in particular, the plan mostly speaks to repurposing of vacant spaces and corridor development, but infill lot development is not something that's specifically called out. Not saying that's good or bad, but this is where it puts like a lot of pressure that in such a small time period around how do then folks submit their plans if they're using the QLP, when QLP has that blind spot around vacant lots in particular. Where vacant lot work shows up in a lot of the community documents is around the public safety work. So in the public safety work, this is where vacant lot comes up a lot. And Margaret, you know this from the CSCC work, where it comes up as a public safety issue there. So the reuse of vacant land, at least from that limited lens, has been thinking about it from how do we work on vacant lots as a public safety concern around infrastructure, poor lighting, and things like that, which makes it more beneficial too from that resident lens. Like, I want to take this lot over because it makes my block feel better, but it just may not be adjacent. So this is, I'm just reiterating because Joan brought that up, and that's an important point, is like the quality of life plan, if it's being used, so it will make it so that there's folks kind of using it, but using it not in the right way. And Teamwork is always getting requests from people using the quality of life plan, but not using it authentically. And it becomes very frustrating for us and our partners to manage that. So that's the part that I'm still cautious of and still it weighs on me.
Yeah, thanks, Cecile. That's really helpful to understand that context about the quality of life plan. But I also appreciate you raising kind of the vacant land and public safety aspect, because I think that maybe that's something we can emphasize more in Englewood specifically, is how can we, take these lots and, reclaim them so that they can have a positive rather than a negative kind of activity around them. And so maybe that's where we lean more into the open space.
Me being clear about where that disconnect is that if you're pushing people to use that document, this is where I would have flagged it earlier, like, hold on, guys, that's not that clear like that, because residents didn't flag that in the community-driven process in 2016, right? Not saying that they would if we got an opportunity. I know that's not what people were trying to say, but if folks who are not connected to our work are using the document, what is that really going to look like? It's not going to be as authentic as it could.
Yep. Thanks.
And I'm just going to add this too. I put it in the chat, but I'm going to say it again. What actually curbed violence on a lot of these blocks were the engaged homeowners who purchased the blocks, transformed those, use those as spaces to connect, use those for drumming circles, use those to heal. And a lot of those was not next door to them. So I'm just going to keep reiterating that if this is a pilot, let's go back to the other pilot that helps the actual homeowners in this community who pays the taxes, who you want to pay the taxes, because a nonprofit doesn't pay taxes. So it doesn't help tax base at all if a nonprofit gets it with no taxes on it and transforms it, and instead of the engaged residents on the block, who so many examples that we can share that actually stabilize their block because they had that opportunity to do so.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate, if a homeowner does want to purchase the land across the street and use it, for example, for a drumming circle, I think that is totally an allowable use. They would just apply via the open space application and share details about how they will use the land. And, I hear your point. The city hasn't done a great job of taking care of the land, which is, I totally agree. And I think, that's a larger issue, but
But they
just-
now have to
yeah.
pay 10% instead of the
Mhm.
dollar that they was able to pay that didn't, because they have to gate it, because that happened as well. Your city will tag you if you don't have gates.
Mhm.
But you need these additional funds to actually maintain the lot, put the gates up, get it in compliance. But now you're also asking homeowners of Englewood, in a community that is below the median poverty, to pay 10% of the market value. And if you've seen the market value, I know you have CBRE, working with the market analysis, but we're seeing some lots for $40,000, $30,000, $50,000. So I don't know many homeowners who are already trying to keep up with their mortgage and everything else, who also has to pay $2,000, $3,000, and also have to pay for the additional things they have to do with that lot. So,
Yeah. I definitely hear that.
Think about another proposal.
Yeah.
We have the aldermen and the other representatives from the city that really cater towards the homeowners. So it's not perceived that this is a developer's dream, and not necessarily for the red line communities who the city is the reason we have vacant lots. So be considerate of folks who are paying taxes, folks who are homeowners, folks who are engaged. That should be a roundtable.
Yeah. Thanks, Aisha. Appreciate that.
Okay. I will just say that I think we had a very good conversation. I hope that it doesn't end here. I think we've got some good feedback, and we've had some input from folks who, and I'm happy that everyone came today. We don't have the usual audience here, but I think those who are here are very much dialed in to help us, do our best to make sure our programs work, not only for, the unintended audience, but certainly for the intended audience, right? And in this case, we obviously want to make sure that, these programs are not misintended, that we are only focused on developers or what have you. But I think nothing in this program has changed in respect to the homeowners on the block who previously used AMLAP or large lots to acquire property on those streets, except for, the city's now new caveat of trying to, or doing the 10% deal here. So I think the spirit is there still. Maybe there's some fine tuning. Again, this is all new. We're gonna, work towards this for now, and then hopefully we have some informed, people across the city. This is not just in Englewood. This is across the city, and so we'll see if other folks in neighborhoods like ours here also have some of the same reactions. I do want to thank Margaret Decker for the mayor's office for coming today to reaffirm. Noted, Asia. Noted. I see your comment. We want to thank Margaret Decker for coming to the roundtable to reaffirm what has already been kind of socialized in the community on a number of occasions. But this also just goes to hopefully underscore to folks here today that this is an important initiative. And we want to make sure that we are transparent and share with, all of you all here as often as we can prior to the launch. And that this is not the end of a conversation, but, certainly we are in conversation still.
Yeah, thanks so much, Patrick, and thanks for having me. And I really appreciate the discussion and feedback. And I think as we move forward with future rounds, this gives us a lot of things to consider to make sure that we're as responsive to the feedback as possible. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Margaret, for joining the roundtable. Okay, also, we have some community updates here. I want to make sure we bring in GE CDC. Derek Warren is here. He has a quick update for us. Derek, welcome to the roundtable.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Just very quickly, on today, SSA number 80 went before council, and we are moving forward for December 14th for approval and implementation for 2023. So exciting news for SSA number 80. And so looking forward to continuing to move this really historic SSA forward for Englewood. So glad to be a part of that.
No, that is big news. We're excited about the prospects of having a special service area in this community. This has been attempted on a number of occasions. We're glad to see that under your leadership, Derek, that it's finally getting to this point of getting your city council approval. And I want to congratulate you so far on the have so far. This echoes terrible. But congratulations. Congratulations.
No problem. Thank you. And thank you to just my team, Rhea Steele, who has done a phenomenal job, and our advisory committee, our stakeholders who provided testimony at the public hearing on yesterday, and naturally, of course, Alderman Coleman for her support. So we're really excited, and we know it will be extremely impactful and beneficial for the Englewood community. So thank you all.
Felicia Young is not here, wanted to provide an update on 63rd Street Reimagined. We'll look for that at the next roundtable and hopefully get an update from her. Obviously, we want to make sure that we incorporate the voices of folks who are doing the real impactful and necessary work on the ground in Englewood, and make sure that they know they have a platform here to speak to, providing updates and the stuff that they're working on in this community. Alderman Coleman, I'll offer you an update.
Patrick, real quickly, is it any
Sure.
way you can send the notice beforehand for that next meeting, a little bit before, an hour before?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to, okay, thank you, Asia. You taking my final
And when
comment.
is your last day? Would you be facilitating the meeting in December?
Oh, man, Lord, what's going on, Asia? All right, okay. Thank you. Appreciate all that. Alderman Coleman, do you have an update that you want to provide the community before I offer some remarks here? Alderman Coleman. Okay. All right.
Patrick, quickly, this is Rhea, if I could just say
Rhea.
something. Yeah. So I also wanted to thank Alderman Taylor for her support with the SSA as well. And I put in the chat, we have a restaurant that's open. You may know Chef Fury. Please support him. He's Hot Brats is now open. He's at 6239 South Ashland Avenue. He's got some holiday specials available for you. I put the information in the chat. That's it.
Thank you, Rhea. Thank you. I know we spoke about that earlier. Forgot to get you in there. Thank you very much for jumping in. Joan, do you have any updates from the 20th Ward office that you want to share with us?
No,
Okay. All right. Well,
I don't know if she knew that you would be making the ask, but I'll follow up for the next roundtable.
sure. Okay. Just want to make sure in case you had an update for us or an announcement or anything. All right. So everybody, I want to first apologize for getting the notice out tardy today. That's all on me. And I thought that I had sent the notice out. I know I had the Zoom link. I know the alderman's offices were informed, but my apologies for not sending out the wide distribution prior to today. So I want to just, first of all, take that mea culpa, and I apologize for that. So the next meeting is targeted for December 14th. And I'm not sure if we're going to hold that because it's the holiday season, but that's the tentative date as it is right now for the next roundtable will be December 14th at 4 o'clock. It's also the day of city council, so that may be a long day for some of the elected officials who normally attend this meeting. That being said, in the event that this is the last meeting, I will be taking a leave of absence from the department. That leave will be effective at the end of the year, December 30th. And so if this is the last meeting, then it has been my pleasure to serve in this capacity as the planner for Englewood until such time that I am no longer the planner for Englewood. But certainly during the time that I will be away, I will miss this group. I have been wonderfully able to learn from you as much as I hope to have been able to inform you all. And it's been a pleasure for me to work alongside you in community to make sure that Englewood is one of the premium residential neighborhoods to live in and one of the most desirous up and coming environments for businesses and retailers to come and invest in. And so I'm scheduled to come back to the city early March, and we'll see what happens. But I will be taking a leave effective at the end of the year. And so thanks, Ms. Butler, for jumping the shark on my news. Appreciate you being in real time with me, and I'll leave it at that. The next meeting tentatively, though, however, is scheduled for December 14th at the usual time, 4:15. And if this meeting, in fact, does get held, then I will be back on this day to facilitate this meeting. But in the future meetings, there will be other department representatives here from DPD that will manage the roundtable. And so you guys will be in great hands in terms of facilitating conversations that will make sure that the folks in the neighborhoods are informed as what the city is doing to make sure that, again, Englewood is on the rise. All right. Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Baldwin. I appreciate your comment. All right, everybody.
No problem. Good luck.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. Everybody, if there aren't any more comments or anything, then we'll wrap it up here at 5:18. And I wish you all a great evening and hope you all have a wonderful time watching the Chicago Bulls. Wonderful time watching the I know Jim will be watching the game tonight. All right. All right, everyone. All right. Have a great night. Thanks for attending the roundtable, and we'll see you next time.